The screen showed a castle shrouded in thick fog. Inside the castle, all the torches and candles were lit, shining in the darkness. At the gathering place, the people were chatting about Kaiden's news.
Schnoder, what do you think about Greg and Mayaru's statements?
Of course, they are obvious lies. Even if Andre really was killed by Kaiden, those two would have intervened or found another way. It doesn't make sense that 3 of the top 10 went together, but one of them ended up dead.
It is possible that Andre was defeated by Kaiden and then those two captured him. Andre has clues about Astra's first control besides his own.
Whatever the case, Andre made a foolish choice to team up with other top 10. He should have realized that if he got hurt, the 2 he moved with could attack him at any time. What do you plan to do about this?
I will investigate whether their claims are true, but there's not much we can do besides reveal the facts. If we end up clashing with Greg and Mayaru, as well as Kaiden, our losses will only increase. Andre's loss of power is significant, but it might be a blessing in disguise. It was like carrying a bomb that could go off at any moment. For decades, various factions have quietly existed around us, the top 10, but that was just on the surface.
In this situation, Andre's uncontrollable behavior was a risk to our frame.
Then the beautiful grandmother began to think about where to start the investigation. The screen changed to an urban area with tall buildings. Inside the building, there were several people gathered for a meeting. The narrator informs us that President Yu Jeong and Han Seong-ik are in the top 50 in the world, and they are upper-tier rankers. President Kim Ha-young congratulates them both, because they have the power to be free from the pressure of other countries. Then another said, the situation could be worse as our country is under economic and political pressure due to limited power. President Han Kante suggested that we should show our strength to the public and dominate the non-awakeners. If your strength is exposed to the public, it will make us look stronger than ever, and you too can pose a threat to other awakeners. President Kang Suman is silent and hasn't made any suggestions, and President Yoo Ji-pyo is silent as well. Then President Kim Ha-young said,
"It is nice to see your positive outlook, rather than the useless worries of us old folks."
They were immediately surprised to hear President Kim Ha-young's words. The conversation continued.
So, we will conclude that we just need to be cautious in our relationships with the top 10, and think positively.
Other top 10 will likely hesitate to come to Korea, so there's no need to worry too much, because Kaiden is here.
President Yoo Ji-pyo said, even if Kaiden is there is no guarantee that he will help us. And from the start he didn't even think about helping us. But Han Seong-ik's view is different. Kaiden must like it. Everyone in the room was confused by what Han Seong-ik meant. Then he explained that Kaiden was different from the other top 10, because the top 10 would avoid fighting if they were injured. But Kaiden is always eager to fight them. Again, they were all surprised to hear such good information. Top 10 Slayer, top 10 Hunter, and Kaiden hunt each other. The screen changes in the house where Kaiden lives. There Kaiden was concentrating on healing his wound. The healing orb began to slowly envelop his body. However, Kaiden was not concentrating. He was thinking about his enemies who would increase. Because he had defeated 2 of the top 10 and was about to destroy the top 10 structure that had been solid for decades. Still trying to concentrate, but it was difficult because behind him there was a noise. Then Kaiden looked back, telling them to be quiet and not bother him. But the 2 cats were still fighting and biting each other. Kaiden started to get annoyed and yelled, and told them to get out. They immediately panicked seeing Kaiden, who was upset. Then Kaiden turned around and calmed down, starting to concentrate. After closing his eyes, he could not concentrate. With annoyance, he walked out of the room. After leaving, he was surprised by the arrival of someone. It turned out to be Gastella, who came uninvited. Gastella kept looking at Kaiden like she had something to talk about. Kaiden asked Cardine when Gastella would arrive, but she said she didn't know. The atmosphere in the house became quiet, and no one came inside. Then Gastella asked them, "Why do you look like a cat, and the other to look like dogs?" Then Gastella asked them about their purpose for changing shape. The 3 of them answered, "This form is more efficient for recovery." Gastella just understood that the small form could be more efficient, but it looked ridiculous to Gastella for choosing the shape of a cat and a dog. After Gastella mocked, they were immediately annoyed with her. Then Kaiden asked Gastella about her purpose for coming here. Gastella looked seriously into Kaiden's eyes and Caden returned Gastella's gaze. They are both just silent like statues, can't find a reason. Because she didn't answer, Caden persuaded Gastella to tell her the purpose of coming here. Gastella's assistant was sweating because she was panicking. She turned her head to the side to look for a plausible reason. By thinking hard, and the panic had peaked, she had found the right reason to answer Caden's question. She quickly pointed at Bluss, and reasoned that she had come here to see how Bluss was doing. Bluss was panicked and surprised, because he didn't know what was going on. Then Caden told Gastella to bring Bluss, if she was really worried about him. Gastella looked at Caden with concern, but Caden took it casually. And actually the reason Gastella came was to see Caden's condition and worrying about him, but Gastella was embarrassed to say. Seeing that Caden was still healthy, Gastella was able to calm down, and she immediately left them without saying goodbye. After Gastella left, the atmosphere of the house was quiet and silent again. Caden still didn't realize that Gastella was very worried about him. On the other hand, the two people were the same, just silent and daydreaming. The screen switched. Still in the Jiwoo residential area. Inside the house as usual there is a lot of cat food scattered around, and they are sleeping on the floor. Upstairs near the stairs, he looks glum and lackluster. Then the cats woke up, went up to the second floor, and they were concerned to see Jiwoo moping alone. Seeing Jiwoo's face worried about something, they immediately approached Jiwoo to tell him not to worry too much. He was happy to see the two of them supporting him, but he was still worried about Caden, because his recovery was so slow after receiving such an injury. The skinny cat explained that Caden was seriously injured after fighting the top 10, and he was also now being hunted by the other top 10, a very bad situation. Hearing that, Jiwoo could only bow his head, and still hope that Caden could recover quickly, because it had been days since he had recovered. The skinny cat could only encourage Jinwoo, so that he wouldn't keep blaming himself. While chatting, suddenly they heard Caden's noisy voice. Jiwoo immediately stood up and saw Caden walking out of the house. After being asked where he was going, Caden replied that he wanted to sunbathe. They felt sad to see Caden trembling while walking. The house area lights were on, indicating that it was getting night. Jiwoo panicked because Caden hadn't returned since morning, and Caden hadn't even eaten his chew. Hearing chew, they were shocked by the situation. Usually Caden never leaves before eating his chew. Continuing, Jiwoo opened the door to look for Caden. On the street he looked here and there and saw something over the fence. Jiwoo looked at the neighbor's fence, and it turned out that Caden was relaxing on the fence. Then Jiwoo approached Caden asking why he hadn't come home all day, and he gave Caden's favorite chew. Caden enjoyed a healthy and nutritious meal. Jiwoo felt calm because nothing happened to Caden. He continued to watch Caden eat the chew. While eating, Jiwoo asked about Caden's condition, and he felt guilty for not having healing powers like Karteen, and hoped to help Caden in his healing. On the other hand, Caden did not answer Jiwoo's questions. He just ate his chew. Jiwoo panicked and was shocked by Caden's silence. Then Jiwoo took Caden home and called Karteen and Pluton. With tears in his eyes, Jiwoo told them that Caden was in trouble. They were shocked and didn't understand what the problem meant. Jiwoo explained that Caden did not answer when spoken to. The other cats approached Caden, but didn't seem to recognize Caden. Caden automatically felt disturbed and roared. The skinny cat was shocked at Caden's behavior. Caden continued to howl like a normal cat, and was uncomfortable. They were all saddened to see Caden's very strange behavior. Caden continued to roar at the other cats in the house. Then he jumped to hide himself. Everyone was even more surprised, seeing Caden who could not control his body. And Caden looked like a mindless cat. They wondered if this was the effect of his unhealed wound. So, he lost his mind and completely turned into a cat. Then the skinny cat explained that the change from human to cat had a side effect. That when he was in cat form, he didn't need to use any strength, but when he was in human form, he needed a lot of energy. And if he uses too much energy, he will automatically return to cat form. Then the skinny cat has a theory. If it's true, then Caden won't be able to return to his original form. Jiwoo was shocked to hear that and didn't seem to believe it could happen. In a panic, Jiwoo asked how to bring Caden back. The skinny cat replied, it was very difficult, because in cat form Caden could not use force control. Then they thought that Caden would end up like this. Caden was seen still letting out a roar, and they are still looking at Caden with deep sadness. Jiwoo still can't believe Kaiden's condition. Likewise with the Gastella behind him, all of them looked at Kaiden with faces that couldn't believe it could happen. Then they tried one by one to resuscitate Kaiden, but Kaiden remained in his general cat nature, still roaring. Jiwoo began to shed tears. He tried to remind Kaiden about the first time they met, like playing together, laughing together and needing each other. Jiwoo couldn't hold back the tears and cried right then and there. When Jiwoo cried, suddenly there was a familiar voice and made them all turn around. And it turns out there is a cat talking, and it looks like Kaiden. Jiwoo, Pluto and Kartine were silent and shocked. Likewise with Gastella, who only glared at Kaiden. All of them were confused to see two cats that looked very similar. Then Jiwoo pointed to the cat in front of him who it was. Then Kaiden explained that it was the form of the cat he was imitating. Jiwoo sobbed, holding back tears of happiness, and immediately hugged Kaiden with a happy feeling. Kaiden was confused and asked, "What exactly happened?" Jiwoo replied, he thought Kaiden turned into a cat completely due to being seriously injured. On the other hand, Gastella felt she had been pranked, and decided to leave. Certain, and Pluton panicked, having given the wrong information. And Kaiden looked at them both threateningly.